This is a big one too. I mean, people at work, I don't know how it is. Well, I do probably know how it is with your work too. People talk about everything under the sun. And nobody has a problem with it. Nobody has a problem with you talking about, the how many stars you won on your video game, or how many levels you reached on your video game, or how about those Lakers, or whatever. Everything under the sun people can talk about, and nobody has an issue with talking about it. You can ramble on about it at work as you're carrying on doing your work. Nobody has a problem. But once you start mentioning Christ, and once you start talking about the Bible, and once you start talking about Christianity, now all of a sudden people got a problem. Hey, welcome back to Beyond These Walls, a channel dedicated to both public and private evangelism. My name's Andre. This is another episode. Today's episode is going to be with regard to a memorandum that was recently published by the Trump administration, or more specifically, the Office of Personnel Management. Now, this memorandum is specifically important for those who are currently occupying federal employment or federal jobs. It specifically governs those who are working within federal jobs with regard to religious expression and the freedom thereof. All right, so this is very important. Before we get into it, I just want to express that I do appreciate this administration's keen, observance of religious rights within America, and their protection against those that would try and undermine the religious rights that are inherent in us being Americans. The Trump administration has done quite a bit to protect religious freedom in this country, and I just want to raise awareness to that. Number one of the things that the Trump administration did is they established a faith office in the White House. They established a faith office in the White House. That's a big deal. And that's a big statement that the President of the United States is making. Excuse that in the background. That's my watch going off. But that's a big statement that the President's making when he takes office. He establishes a faith office to show that he takes religion very serious, and he takes our First Amendment right very serious. Whenever in the Army, at least, whenever a new commander takes the seat and they begin to meet with all of the people, all of the leaders within the organization, whether it be, the leader of the communications office, the leader of the intelligence office, the leader of, the various platoon leaders, depending on what level of command they're taking, they'll meet with various leaders within their organization. And something that I've noticed is that there are certain leaders that place a precedence on meeting with the chaplain. All right, they meet with the chaplain. They don't forget about the chaplain because they understand that the religious freedom that the soldiers have within that organization is very important. And so they want to make sure that they're able to collaborate with the chaplain. Well, in the same way, when the president took office, he made it very clear during his campaign trail, as well as when he took office, that religion was going to be a big priority of his, and the freedom of religion and the freedom of the expression of religion. All right, so that's a big deal. Number two, he created a task force specifically designated to eradicate anti-Christian bias. That's a big deal. That's a big deal for Christians. I don't know if you were aware of this. If you're a Christian, hopefully you are already aware of this. If not, then this is something that hopefully is news to you. But the Trump administration created a task force to eradicate Christian bias from the Department of Justice. That's a big deal. That says to me that we have a president that cares about the rights of Christians and that is intent on protecting those rights. And then number three, this is something that recently happened as of May 1st, 2025. The Trump administration established a religious liberty Commission, May 1st, 2025, just recently, a couple months ago. He established a religious liberty commission. And I just want to read a bit of what this commission is responsible for, what they're being charged with from the president, specifically from the president. All right. And so it says here, let me pull it up. Here it is. I just missed it. I got this thing on my screen. It's kind of small. One second. Where did it go? Okay, it's down here. All right, it says the commission shall produce a comprehensive report on the foundations of religious liberty in America, the impact of religious liberty on American society, current threats to domestic religious liberty, strategies to preserve and enhance religious liberty protections for future generations, and programs to increase awareness of and celebrate America's peaceful religious pluralism. Specific topics to be considered by the Commission under these categories shall include the following areas: the First Amendment rights of pastors, religious leaders, houses of worship, faith-based institutions, and religious speakers, attacks across America on houses of worship of many religions, debanking of religious entities, the First Amendment rights of teachers, students, military chaplains, service members, employers, and employees, conscience protections in the healthcare field, and concerning vaccine mandates, parents' authority to direct the care, upbringing, and education of their children. That's a big one, including the right to choose a religious education, permitting time for voluntary prayer and religious instruction at public schools, government displays with religious imagery, and the right of all Americans to freely exercise their faith without fear or government censorship or retaliation. That's a big deal. I'll provide the link in the description if you want to check out that entire document. But this Religious Liberty Commission has been commissioned by the President of the United States to raise an awareness among America's citizens as to our founding rights, okay? As to our founding religious rights. You know, the people who, the fathers that, our forefathers, if you will, that founded this nation, they founded it, of course, on biblical principles. And they also thought that it was necessary for the First Amendment of our Constitution, to entail religious liberty, freedom of speech. These things are like the most fundamental rights that make us Americans. And so the Trump administration is trying to get back to our historical foundation as a nation and what those rights look like, and trying to raise awareness to that. All right, and so I appreciate that. And then obviously just recently getting to this memorandum, the administration just published, or the Office of Personnel Management published under this administration, protection of religious expression in the workplace. It's a memorandum. It's not very lengthy, so I'll provide the link in the description if you want to review it. But I do want to read some of the verbiage that comes from this memorandum. And again, this is for federal employees. If you're a federal employee, if you're a soldier, if you work in any federal department, this pertains to you and your freedom of religious expression. All right. One of the things that's mentioned in the memorandum, it says here, the U.S. Supreme Court has clarified that the Free Exercise Clause protects not only the right to harbor religious beliefs inwardly and secretly, but also protects the ability of those who hold religious beliefs of all kinds to live out their faiths in daily life. You see, so what that's saying is that the Supreme Court has clarified what the Free Exercise Clause entails in terms of religious expression. It's not that we as federal employees just have the right to harbor religious convictions, right? But it's that there needs to be I'm not really sure of the word, but the government needs to protect the right of those individuals who harbor those beliefs to express their religion openly and unashamedly and without fear of reprisal or reprimand. This is a big deal. I just talked to a Christian sister of mine, and she used to work for the state some time ago, and she told me that when she worked for the state, that she was not permitted to have any Bible on her desk. She wasn't permitted to have any scriptures displayed in her work area. And she was reprimanded on one occasion for praying with a distraught coworker. She was reprimanded and told that she could not do that. And so from that day forward, she had to sort of navigate freely expressing her religion in a not freely expressing her religion, but she had to navigate helping people in terms of people coming to her asking for prayer and counsel and things of that. So she had to navigate that in a sort of subtle way, and that should never be the case for American citizens anywhere. We shouldn't have to cower, or we shouldn't have to be afraid of reprimand because we're freely living out the tenets of our faith. That should not be the case. All right, continuing on. Number 2, the memorandum also states, it says, this memorandum provides guidance to agencies on robustly protecting and enforcing each federal employee's right to engage in religious expression in the federal workplace, consistent with the U.S. Constitution, Title VII, and other applicable sources of law. All right, did you hear that? Freedom of religious expression within the workplace. Now, this is a big deal to me because I have been freely expressing my faith since I've joined the Army some 13 years ago. And I can't tell you how many occasions have come about where people have told me that this is not the right place. This is not the right time for you to share your faith. Now, they don't base that off of any, any Army doctrine. There's no Army doctrine that says I can't or you can't, as a federal employee or soldier, express your faith while in uniform or while at work. There's no doctrine to support that, but people affirm that very confidently. And what I found is that in Army culture, at least, I can't speak with regard to every federal department, but within Army culture, there's this assumption that because I'm in uniform, I can't express my faith openly. In fact, I was just talking to somebody about like 3 days ago, something like that. And this individual told me that, and I don't really know how we got on the topic, but he said, because we can't share our faith in uniform. He just kind of said that just like, lightheartedly, like I was in agreement. And I asked him, I said, who told you that? And he didn't have a response. Nobody told him, but he assumed that because that's kind of like the assumption that everybody has, everybody except for, I guess, a few. I certainly don't have that assumption because I'm very open and very, I would say, bold with regard to expressing Christ in the workplace. I'm not ashamed of that. And if you have been, I'm sharing this video because I want to encourage you to not be. You don't have to be ashamed to be who you are at work, right? Like Christ is my life. If I were to go to a place of work and they said, hey, you can't express your religion, what they're telling me is I can't be myself because my religion or my relationship with Christ is who I am. It is the foundation of my life. So I have to be able to express that. If I can't, then you don't want me as an employee and I can't work here. That should be the attitude of every Christian. But I'm encouraging you that as a federal employee, hey, share Christ unashamedly and unboldly. Obviously, do it with wisdom. We don't want to be taken. The memorandum also talks about how in our expressions of faith, it can't detract from normal business operations, right? That's not the verbiage it uses, but it's to that effect. It can't detract from normal business operations. So you got to use wisdom. I'm not going to show up to work with a podium, right, and my Bible and begin to preach while, as opposed to working, right? We got to use wisdom. But I'm sharing this because I want you to know that your government supports you expressing your faith, and not only supports you, but encourages you to do so. All right, moving on. Number 3, employees must be allowed to engage in private religious expression in work areas to the same extent that they may engage in non-religious private expressions. This is a big one too. I mean, people at work, I don't know how it is. Well, I do probably know how it is with your work too. People talk about everything under the sun. And nobody has a problem with it. Nobody has a problem with you talking about, the how many stars you won on your video game, or how many levels you reached on your video game, or how about those Lakers, or whatever. Everything under the sun people can talk about, and nobody has an issue with talking about it. You can ramble on about it at work as you're carrying on doing your work. Nobody has a problem. But once you start mentioning Christ, and once you start talking about the Bible, and once you start talking about Christianity, now all of a sudden people got a problem. Well, what I want to tell you is that this memorandum that the Office of Personnel Management just published on the 28th of July says otherwise. All right. It says that, hey, you can express your religion to the same extent that everybody else expresses their non-religious conversations. And so that's a big deal. And so, again, want to encourage you, be open about your faith in Christ. Jesus said, he said, you're a city set on a hill that's not easily hid. He said, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Why should you relegate your Christian witness to off-duty hours only, right? You work, for quite a bit of time throughout the week. There's a lot of hours you spend at work. Why would you not express your faith in the workplace and only relegate it to private time? I want to tell you that you don't have to do that. The memorandum says you don't have to do it, but even if we didn't have the memorandum, right? Even if we didn't have a president that didn't support, or if we didn't have a president that supported religious freedom, we still have doctrine that we live according to, that Christ has spoke. Christ has commissioned us, right, to go into all the world. That includes the workplace. Go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature, right? We're to stand up for Christ. We're to stand up for the faith. We're to defend the faith. We're to contend for the faith. This isn't to be done just in private settings. No, this is to be done at all times of life, all throughout the day. When I encounter anything in life, like I need to be ready to contend for the faith and to be a witness for Christ, to be ready in season and out of season. I need to be ready to witness to somebody and to express why I have faith in Jesus, to give an answer for the reason for the hope that is in me, as Peter said. That needs to be done at all times, not just relegated to my private time off work. Okay. All right. And so I want to move on and express some, or not express, but read some more of the verbiage from this particular memorandum that the current administration, or the OPM, has published. Specifically, some categories that it mentions that are protected. Categories that are protected. This is to inform you, right? So you can be confident in showing up to work with your Bible. So you can be confident in expressing your religion in social circles at work. So you can be confident in hanging that poster on your wall of your favorite Bible verse. You can be confident that there's no reprimand that's going to come as a result of that. All right, so take a look at this. It says categories of employee conduct which should not result in disciplinary or corrective action include but are not limited to. All right, so I want you to listen very closely. These are protected categories with regard to to the freedom of your religious expression. These are protected categories. Number 1, display and use of items used for religious purposes or religious icons. Employees should be permitted to display and use items used for religious purposes or icons of a religiously significant nature, including but not limited to Bibles, artwork, jewelry, posters displaying religious messages, and other indicia of religion, such as crosses, crucifixes, and mezuzahs, on their desks, on their person, and in their assigned workspaces. Number two, expressions by groups of federal employees. This is a protected category. Expressions by groups of federal employees. Agencies should allow one or more employees to engage in individual or communal religious expressions in both formal and informal settings, alone or with fellow employees, so long as such expressions do not occur during on-duty time. Agencies should not restrict such expressions based merely on hypothetical or potential concerns. All right, and then moving on, this is a big one here. Conversations between federal employees. Employees may engage in conversations regarding religious topics with fellow employees, including attempting to persuade others of the correctness of their own religious views, provided that such efforts are not harassing in nature. Did you hear that? The federal government, they encourage respectful disagreement in the workplace. Respectful disagreement in the workplace. And so no longer can someone write a complaint. I've had a formal complaint placed against me because I was so-called harassing people in witnessing concerning Christ. No longer can someone submit a complaint because you approach them and ask them their religion and ask them why they believe what they believe. And not only that, and told them, hey, you probably want to rethink that because historically it's not accurate or it doesn't measure up to the truth. There's nothing wrong with that. If people get offended, then that's their issue, right? That's their issue. But you should be able to engage with the people that you work with on a religious level and express your faith with the desire of hopefully helping them to come to a better understanding, which ultimately means coming to Christ. All right. But that's a protection. That's a big deal. And again, the link will be provided in this video, so you'll be able to check it out for yourself. All right. And then, so I'm not going to read all of this. I'm not going to read all of it, but that's enough. Okay. And I think that's enough for, hopefully this has lit some fire in you believers who have up until this point been afraid to share Christ in the workplace. Hopefully this has lit some fire underneath you to begin to do so. I hope that this video would result in that. But the links will be provided in the description of this video. I highly encourage you to check them out, read them. They're short reads. It's not super long. It's not going to take a ton of time, but it will be very informative to you. Other than that, that's all that I have for this video. Excuse me, goodness. That's all I have for this video. As always, I'll see you all next time on Beyond These Walls.